Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Council. That brings us to public hearing number 4. This will be a public hearing will be held to consider the disposition of city-owned property bounded by 1st Street Southwest Northwest Interstate 380, 3rd Street Southwest and 2nd Avenue Southwest, including the alley right-of-way portion of 2nd Street from 2nd Avenue Southwest to Interstate 380 and A Avenue Northwest to 2nd Street Northwest, and inviting competitive proposals for any persons interested in acquisition and development of this property. Jennifer, I'll recognize you.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, public hearing to consider disposition of property. And on the map, you can see these shaded areas are city-owned properties. And again, it goes from Interstate 380 over to 2nd Avenue, and then from 1st Street over to 3rd Street. Again, these properties were acquired through the Voluntary Property Acquisition Program, so there are federal funds involved. We did receive a letter of interest from the Cedar Rapids Development Group, and the proposal is to locate a casino on the property. Again, the location in the 100-year floodplain does require us to satisfy some deed restrictions prior to transfer of this property. We are working with the state. Since this property is not within a historic district, we are looking to work with the state to establish a viable business corridor. And we've submitted that to the state, and that's based on the planning effort that we did for the Kingston Village with a lot of input from area stakeholders. So again, actions to date, the letter of request was received on April 18th. Motion to set a public hearing, which brings us here today. Again, looking at the evaluation criteria, our standard criteria for market and financial feasibility, experience of the developer, as well as consistency with those neighborhood plans, including that Kingston Village plan. And then some additional criteria, very similar to the ones on the previous project, including that designed to accommodate inclusion into the city's flood protection system. There is one additional one here as well, which is number 10, which is connectivity, especially with the amphitheater. This is a point that came up in that Kingston Village planning, so we wanted to note it for proposers. So again, next steps following that same track, an informational meeting on May 23rd, proposal deadline June 17th, evaluation of those proposals, and then that recommendation back to City Council on June 25th. I'll turn it back over.
Thank you, Jennifer. Council, again, there's no resolution on this. This is just a public hearing. This is the time and place for a public hearing. Does anyone from the audience wish to address the council? If so, we ask you to come forward and state your name and address clearly for the public record, and you have up to 5 minutes to address the council.
First of all, I want to say something that Ann said reminded me that the last public hearing was to invite proposals and not to approve, since there was so much talk about CRSD going there. It's not to approve the proposal to give the land. It's to invite competitive proposals. So I want to retract that. It's not an objection. You were right when you said it was just a comment. So if you can correct that in the minutes or whatever. For number 4, I am objecting. And the reason is not because I'm negative or I need to get a life, or let's see, it is because I want to support the community. These parcels have been all combined for one, with the intent, of course, that the Cedar Rapids Development Group will obtain it for the casino. I think that these parcels should be put out to bid individually like the rest of them. And by grouping them all together, it limits greatly the number of people that will submit proposals, because they'll have to get it all or nothing. It's all or nothing. And so what I think should be done is that they should be individual. Now, what will that do? Well, if the Cedar Rapids Development Group wants it, they will have to bid higher for each of them. That would mean more money for the city if they're going to be buying it, and that would open up the bid process to other people if they want some of those parcels. yes, maybe the Cedar Rapids Development Group might lose a few of those parcels to what were previously parcels. I don't know if you've combined them all yet. They may lose them to others that bid higher for those parcels. Well, the Cedar Rapids taxpayers will benefit from that, and if the Cedar Rapids Development Group really wants those, they can establish some sort of real estate transaction with those who did get those parcels. So what I'm objecting to is setting this out to competitive proposals for the entire group of parcels at once, in one lot. I'm open to having it set out for proposals, but not in one lot, individually. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the council? If so, we ask you to come to the podium, state your name and address clearly for the public record, and you have up to 5 minutes to address the council.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Morning.
Members of the City Council, Jeff, Jim, Amy, how are you? I'm Steve Gray, 2649 Indian Hill Road, Southeast, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. You know, it's kind of interesting that I think it was 2 years ago today that Justin and Monica and Drew and I had coffee at Cooper's Mill. And they said, have you ever considered the possibility of exploring doing a casino in Lynn County, preferably Cedar Rapids? They've known that over the last 7 years we've made investments in 5 other companies. We've put over $100 million to work, and we've created 300 jobs as a result of that, with none of that coming from taxpayers. We put our investors and local money to work. So I said, you know, life's pretty busy, but it's something that we would look at. And were it not for the two of their encouragement, their drive, their initiative, and support during that first year, I probably wouldn't be standing here today. So thank you. That said, a few highlights. We went public with this plan in October of 2012. We launched our petition drive the week or the Monday after Thanksgiving. We achieved 16,192 signatures in 7 weeks. We were able to petition the county, set the special election for March 5th. A 58-day campaign ensued. For those of you that are worried about me ever running for office, you never, ever need to worry about that. We won 61.2 to 38.8%. What's interesting, though, is when you break down the numbers in Cedar Rapids, we won almost 2 to 1. So clearly, not only a landslide, but quite frankly, an avalanche. So what we've been doing since then is working on finding the best manager we can to operate this property, and we are in the closing stages of those agreements and expect to have an agreement in principle within the next couple of weeks. We pick the right partner, it will probably increase the size, and it will definitely increase the success. The other thing that I would call to the council's attention is that we have acquired 3 pieces of private property in the area that we're interested in. So it is another show of our strong financial commitment to this area and to this community. We've also done a lot of work on our $110 million of financing, and I think one thing that I should definitely note is that we now have over 150 local investors who have pledged support to this project. In addition to that, we expect that our partner will put a substantial amount of equity in this project. However, I will tell you that the residents of Lynn County will own initially the controlling interest in this property. So we are pretty excited about all of those efforts. In terms of next steps, obviously this timeline is important to us because on June 6th in the Iowa Racing and Gaming Commission meeting, we expect and hope that they will agree to accept applications. They are not required to accept applications. But we would be hopeful and expect that at that point they will announce that they are accepting applications. We also hope and expect that they will set a timeline where our application would need to be submitted in either late August or early September. Having all of the financing, our operator selected, as well as a purchase agreement on this property are critical to that application's success. So we like the timeline that has been proposed, and we intend to aggressively participate with the city in an appropriate development agreement. So with that, I'd like to thank all of you for your initiative and your support, because of what you've done over the last several years since the flood is highly commendable. And then when I think about things like what John and Diane are doing, and what John Frew and Scott Byers are doing, you know what? That's noteworthy. And that is an incredible thing and why we all live here. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Would anyone else like to address the council? If so, we ask you to come forward and state your name and address clearly for the public record. Seeing none, that closes out the public comment section of public hearing number 4, council. Let the record indicate that a public hearing was held on this matter.